Portland is quietly reshaping its neighborhoods, and one of the biggest tools behind that shift is something called the Cottage Cluster Code, which allows several small homes to be built together on a single lot instead of just one large house. The idea is simple but meaningful. Instead of one structure dominating a property, the code allows 3 to 16 detached cottages arranged around a shared courtyard, creating a small community that mixes gentle density with a familiar neighborhood scale. This change comes from two places: Oregon's statewide push to expand housing options through House Bill 2001, and Portland's own residential infill projects, known as RIP and RIP2, which opened many formerly single-dwelling zones to a wider range of housing types. Together, these reforms introduce space for cottage clusters, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, and other forms of middle housing that were once effectively banned in much of the city. The Cottage Cluster Code applies to zones like R2.5, R5, R7, R10, and RM1, which cover a large portion of Portland's lower-density neighborhoods. If a lot sits in one of these zones and meets the size requirements, it can hold several small cottages instead of a single big home, giving property owners, builders, and future residents more options without dramatically changing the look or feel of the block. A central feature of cottage clusters is the shared outdoor space. Instead of each home having a private backyard, the units face a common courtyard, walkway, or garden area that encourages daily interaction and gives the cluster a sense of community that's hard to create with traditional layouts. In many ways, it echoes some of Portland's historic bungalow courts and small courtyard communities built decades ago. Another important piece is the middle housing land division option. A builder can create a cottage cluster and then divide the property into separate lots, which allows the sale of each cottage individually. This model supports smaller, more attainable homeownership opportunities, since buyers don't have to take on a large house or a condo structure with shared walls. Supporters argue that cottage clusters fill a gap between apartments and traditional single-family homes, especially at a time when households are smaller, construction costs are higher, and people are looking for simpler living arrangements that still offer privacy and a sense of place. The smaller scale also tends to blend more easily into existing neighborhoods compared to taller multifamily buildings. There are limits built into the code. The lot still needs to fit the cluster, the homes must remain detached, and the shared courtyard is not optional. The layout rules ensure that the cottages form a walkable sequence around the central open space, and the overall design is meant to feel intentional rather than crowded. Developers are beginning to test these ideas in different parts of the city, with new cottage clusters appearing in East Portland, parts of North Portland, and on some West Side lots that once seemed too big for a single home but too small for a large apartment project. The pace is slow but steady, and early projects suggest the format can work across a range of neighborhoods. For longtime residents, cottage clusters can be a surprise, because a street lined with single houses might suddenly include a site with 5 or 6 smaller ones. But the height, the garden space, and the porches facing the shared courtyard tend to make the overall feel closer to older Portland housing styles than many newer multifamily developments. City planners say cottage clusters offer a way to add meaningful housing capacity without overwhelming the scale of existing neighborhoods. They introduce more choices, more attainable price points, and more varied living arrangements, all while keeping the buildings modest in size and encouraging small community interactions. As Portland continues to grow and tries to match its housing supply to its housing needs, the Cottage Cluster Code has become one of the more important tools in the city's strategy. It provides a way to increase density without towers, support affordability without sacrificing neighborhood character, and offer a new kind of housing that fits between the options Portland has relied on for decades. How widely cottage clusters will spread remains to be seen, but the option is now in place, and it is already reshaping the possibilities for what Portland neighborhoods can look like in the years ahead.